Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Storytime English. I am so glad you are here with me today. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders relax, and let this story carry you gently through time to a world of palaces, power, and one extraordinary woman. Now, imagine a small village in Eastern Europe. The year is around 1520. The houses are simple, made of wood and stone. There is a church with a small bell tower. Fields of wheat stretch toward the mountains. People here live quietly. They farm the land. They pray. They raise their children. In this village, there is a girl. She is perhaps 15 or 16 years old. She has red hair. She is smart, sharper than most people around her. She laughs easily and often. The people in the village have noticed this about her. She is the kind of girl who fills a room with warmth. One day, horsemen come to the village. They come from the east, from the wide, flat lands near the Black Sea. They are Crimean Tatars, raiders who attack villages along the border and take people to sell as slaves. The villagers try to run. Some hide, some fight. But there are too many horsemen. The girl is taken. She is pulled from her home, from her family, from everything she knows. She is tied with ropes and marched away with other captives, men, women, and children, across hundreds of kilometers, through dust and cold and fear. She arrives at a slave market in Crimea, where human beings are sold the way animals are sold at a farm. There, she is purchased, and from that market, she is sent on a long journey south, across the Black Sea, to the greatest city in the world, Istanbul. She does not know that she will never return to her village. She does not know that one day she will become the most powerful woman in the Ottoman Empire. She does not know that she will change the rules of a dynasty that had stood for 200 years. Her name, the name history remembers her by, is Hürrem Sultan. Stay with me, because this is a story about a girl who lost everything and found a voice that changed an empire. To understand how extraordinary Hürrem's rise was, you need to understand the world she entered. The Ottoman Empire, in the early 1500s, was the most powerful empire on earth. It stretched from the gates of Vienna in Europe to the deserts of Arabia, from the coast of North Africa to the mountains of Persia. Its armies had conquered lands that no other power could touch. Its navy controlled the Mediterranean Sea. Its capital, Istanbul, once called Constantinople, was a city of over 500,000 people. It was larger than Paris, London, and Rome combined. Its mosques reached toward the sky. Its markets overflowed with silk, spices, and gold from every corner of the known world. It was, by any measure, the center of civilization. And at the center of this vast empire sat one man, the Sultan. In 1520, a new sultan had just taken the throne. His name was Suleiman. He was 25 years old. History would later call him Suleiman the Magnificent, because under his rule, the Ottoman Empire reached its greatest heights. He expanded the borders of the empire further than any sultan before him. He reformed the legal system so completely that the Turks gave him another name, Kanuni, the lawgiver. He was also a talented poet who wrote verses about love and loss under a pen name. He was a warrior, a lawmaker, a poet, and a builder, all in one man. He was considered one of the most powerful rulers in the history of the world. Suleiman lived in the Topkapi Palace, a vast complex of courtyards, gardens, and marble halls perched on a hill, overlooking the place where Europe meets Asia. And within the palace walls was a section called the harem. Now, the word harem needs explanation. In the West, this word is often misunderstood. The Ottoman harem was not what movies and novels have sometimes imagined. It was the private household of the Sultan, A large, highly organized institution, with its own rules, its own teachers, its own economy. Hundreds of women lived there. Some were servants. Some were educated in music, languages, and literature. The most talented could rise to positions of real influence. The harem was, in many ways, a school and a court of its own. This is where the girl from the small village arrived. She was still a teenager. She knew no one. She spoke no Turkish. She was surrounded by hundreds of other women, many of whom had been in the harem for years and understood its rules and rhythms. She was at the very bottom, but she had something that no one could take from her personality. The Ottomans gave her a new name. They called her Hürrem. In Turkish, this name means the cheerful one, the one who laughs. And this tells us something remarkable about her. Even after being taken from her home, even after the long journey in ropes and fear, even after arriving in a foreign land where she understood nothing and knew no one, she still smiled. She still laughed. She still found a way to light up the room she was in. She refused to let the world break her spirit. Can you imagine that kind of strength? Most people in her situation would have closed themselves off. They would have become quiet, afraid, invisible. But Hürrem did the opposite. She learned Turkish quickly. She learned to read and write. She studied poetry, music, and the customs of the Ottoman court. She was not the most beautiful woman in the harem. The historical records make this clear. But she was, without question, the most intelligent. She was witty. She could make people laugh. She could hold a conversation with anyone from servants to scholars. She had a mind that moved faster than the people around her. And somehow, from among the hundreds of women in the harem, she caught the attention of the most powerful man in the world. Suleiman noticed her. Not just her face, her mind, her humor, her fire. He began spending time with her, far more time than he spent with any other woman. He talked with her about poetry, about philosophy, about the problems of the empire. He shared his worries about war and politics. She listened. She asked questions. She offered ideas. She treated him not as a god on a throne, but as a man. And slowly, something happened that had never happened before in Ottoman history. The Sultan fell in love. This was not how things worked. Ottoman sultans did not fall in love with women in the harem. They had traditions, strict rules that had been followed for generations. A concubine was expected to give the sultan one son, and then she would be sent away to a distant province with that son to raise him. She would never return to the palace. No woman stayed at the center of power for long. No woman married the sultan. That simply was not done. Hürrem broke every one of those rules. She did not leave after having a son. She stayed. She gave Suleiman 6 children, 5 sons, and 1 daughter. She remained at his side, year after year, decade after decade. And then, around 1533, or 1534, Suleiman did something that shocked the entire empire. He freed Hürrem from slavery, and he married her. Think about what that means. Under Islamic law, a sultan could not marry a slave. The slave had to be freed first. So Suleiman signed the papers that gave Hürrem her freedom. She was no longer property. She was a free woman. And then, as a free woman, she chose to marry the man who had freed her. It was an act that changed everything. A sultan, the most powerful ruler on earth, had married a former slave. It had never happened before in the 200-year history of the Ottoman dynasty. The court was stunned. Foreign ambassadors wrote letters home describing the event in disbelief. A Venetian diplomat reported the news to his government with something close to shock. The people of Istanbul talked of nothing else. Some were amazed, some were angry, but no one could deny what had happened. The girl from the small village was now the legal wife of the sultan. She was now Haseki Sultan, the chief consort. the most powerful woman in the empire. And Hurrem did not waste that power. She became Suleiman's closest advisor. She read reports from the provinces. She discussed military strategy. She wrote letters to foreign kings and queens, including the King of Poland and the King of France. She was one of the first women in Ottoman history to conduct diplomacy in her own name. This was unheard of. Women in the Ottoman court were supposed to be invisible. Hurrem was anything but invisible. She also used her position to help people. She understood something that many powerful people forget, that power means nothing if it is not used to make life better for others. She built a great charitable complex in Istanbul, the Haseki Sultan Complex. It included a mosque, a school for children, a hospital for the sick, and a soup kitchen that fed hundreds of poor people every single day. She built public baths where anyone could wash. She built fountains where anyone could drink clean water. She sent money to help ransom prisoners of war, people who had been captured in battle and held for payment. She funded charitable projects in the holy cities of Mecca and Jerusalem. Wherever she looked, she saw a need, and she acted. But Hurrem's story is not without shadows. The court of the Ottoman Empire was a dangerous place. Power attracted enemies, and Hurrem had many. The most important was Mahidevran, another woman in the harem who had given Suleiman his firstborn son, Prince Mustafa. By tradition, Mustafa should have been the next sultan. He was popular, strong, and admired by the army. But Hurrem's own sons also had claims to the throne, and in the Ottoman system, there was no room for two heirs. The losing prince and often his entire family would be killed when the new sultan took power. This was the terrible reality of Ottoman succession. Hurrem knew that if Mustafa became sultan, her own sons would die. In 1553, Suleiman ordered the execution of Prince Mustafa. The young prince was strangled with a silk cord, the traditional method for royal executions, because Ottoman law forbade the spilling of royal blood. The empire mourned. Many people blamed Hurrem for influencing the sultan's decision. Whether she was truly responsible, no one knows for certain. The historical sources disagree. But the suspicion has followed her name for nearly 500 years. This is the complexity of Hurrem's story. She was brilliant. She was generous. She was a survivor. But she lived in a world where survival and cruelty were sometimes the same thing. She did not create the brutal rules of Ottoman succession, but she played by them because the alternative was watching her own children die. Hurrem Sultan died in April 1558. She was probably in her mid-50s. The exact cause of her death is unknown. Some historians believe it was an illness she had struggled with for years. Suleiman was devastated. The man who had conquered cities and commanded armies was broken by grief. He had loved her for nearly 40 years. He wrote poetry about her beautiful, aching verses about loss and loneliness. In one famous poem, he called her my springtime, my cheerful-faced love, my daytime, my sweetheart, my laughing leaf, my everything. He built a magnificent tomb for her, next to the Süleymaniye Mosque, the greatest mosque in Istanbul, which he had built as the crowning achievement of his reign. It was the grandest mosque in the empire, and he placed her tomb right beside it. He wanted her close to him, even in death. Suleiman ruled for 8 more years after Hurrem died. Those years were marked by further military campaigns, but those who knew him said the light had gone out of his life. He died in 1566, during a military campaign in Hungary, at the age of 71. His body was brought back to Istanbul and buried beside Hurrem, the warrior sultan and the slave girl from a small village side by side for eternity. Hurrem's son, Selim II, became the next sultan, and Hurrem's influence did not end with her death. The period that followed is known as the Sultanate of Women, a time when the mothers and wives of sultans wielded enormous political power in the Ottoman Empire. Hurrem had opened a door that would remain open for over a century. She had shown that a woman could shape the course of an empire not through armies or conquest, but through intelligence, patience, and the power of her voice. Today, Hürrem Sultan is one of the most famous women in Turkish and world history. Her story has been told in novels, paintings, operas, films, and one of the most watched television series ever produced, the Turkish drama Magnificent Century, which brought her story to audiences in over 50 countries. Her face has appeared on postage stamps. Books about her have been translated into dozens of languages. Millions of tourists visit the Süleymaniye Mosque and her tomb in Istanbul every year. They stand before the carved marble and try to imagine the journey from a wooden house in a small village in Eastern Europe to a tomb beside the most powerful sultan who ever lived. It is a journey that seems impossible, but it happened. And it happened because one girl refused to be defined by the worst thing that happened to her. And so, my friend, the story of the girl who was taken from everything and still found a way to rise comes gently to its close. Hürrem could not choose where she was born. She could not stop the horsemen who came to her village. She could not undo the chains that brought her across the sea. But she refused to be silent. She learned. She listened. She spoke. And when she finally had the chance, she used her voice to change the world around her. And you, my friend, are finding your voice too. Learning a new language can feel like arriving in a foreign land where you understand nothing and know no one. Some days, the words feel impossible. Some days, you feel lost. But every word you learn is a step forward. Every sentence you speak is an act of courage. And slowly, day by day, you are building something that no one can take away from you. Hürrem arrived in a strange land with nothing. But she had her mind. She had her will. And she had her voice. You have those things too. Keep speaking. Keep learning. Keep rising. This is Storytime English. Tell me, my friend, what part of Hürrem's story surprised you the most? Was it the girl who still laughed after losing everything? The sultan who broke tradition to marry her? Or the empire she helped shape from behind the palace walls? Leave a comment below. I am always curious to hear from you. There are many more stories waiting right here, and I will be here when you come back. Until next time, take care of yourself and never stop learning.